Shout out to Craig J for sending me this article right here. And it's funny that I'm being sent this today because I was on a live stream today with Lisa Cabrera, True Royal Family, and Santi Walden. And I happened to mention, talking about opioids towards the end of that particular stream. And what do you know? I get sent an article because apparently there's a new opioid on the block. And it is now currently in Milwaukee. It may be other places, but Milwaukee seems to be now their hub because of the amount of overdoses they have had so far. But the name of this drug is called ISO, spelled ISO. And according to this, it says this is a new opioid known as ISO, and it's been found in 7 overdose deaths so far in Milwaukee County. And the tagline they used before it is, the drugs are getting stronger. A new opioid has made its way to Milwaukee, contributing to at least 7 deaths in the county this year as opioid overdoses skyrocket across the state. I'm probably messed this name up. Isotonitazine, also known as ISO, I'll just refer to it as that, is a synthetic opioid as powerful as fentanyl. Now look at that. Here we are thinking fentanyl was very strong. This one's more potent than that. And technically remains legal in the United States, though Wisconsin already has banned it at the state level. The drugs are getting stronger, they're becoming more potent, they're becoming more deadly, and I don't see an end in sight, said Courtney Geiger, a grant manager at the City Health Department assigned to the Milwaukee Overdose Response Initiative. The 7 people who died were men between the ages of 26 and 52. 6 were white men, and all but one had other drugs in their system, Geiger said. Now, how ironic, they left one of them out there. As far as demographic goes, doesn't necessarily mean they were black. They could have been Hispanic, Native American, Arab, something else, Asian, but they made sure to highlight to make sure that they was Caucasian, which I'm actually shocked that they did, because they try to keep that under wraps. But let's be real here. We know who is doing these opioids in very high numbers. Their deaths have been spread out over a period of months, meaning there is no indication these drugs were a part of a particular batch, she said. Naloxone, known by the brand named Narcan, can be used to treat an ISO overdose, but early research suggests it takes multiple doses of nasal spray naloxone to reverse the overdose. It's really important for the public to know there is, in fact, a new drug out there that is as powerful, if not more powerful, than fentanyl. ISO is an analog anti-etonitazine, and I know I probably messed that up, a drug that has been on the federal government's controlled substances list for many years. That means ISO shares nearly the same chemical structure as, I'm going to just call it etazine. I just abbreviated it. Said Sandy Koresh, who leads the Controlled Substances Technical Unit at the State Crime Labs. We started detecting ISO in some of our samples in the fall of 2019, and then we started to see more of it. Like other new lab-created opiates, reports of the first drug surfaced in Europe, and it appears to have spread in part through online sales in the dark web. The fact that this thing had to spread through the dark web lets you know how powerful this thing is. I've never known, well, I take that back. There are drugs that get funneled through the dark web, but it's usually the ones that are, I guess, what you can consider like this one, that should be banned, but they're not going to do it. Of course, they're not going to ban it because they need to make the money. Them big pharmaceutical companies, they got to make their money. And we're talking billions, not millions of dollars. I think many times people don't know what they're getting. She said they think they're getting heroin and they end up with something mixed with multiple components. The lab is seeing new substances more and more frequently. At least 3 substances, including ISO, have been identified within the past year and have not been seen prior to 2019. I've been working crime lab for almost 30 years. In the first 20 years, you never saw anything new, she said. Nowadays, you see something new all the time. Chemists are very good, and it's very lucrative to make small modifications to these molecules, and they're legal. The new opioid comes as a drug-related deaths in Milwaukee County continue at an alarming pace. As of last week, 253 drug deaths have been confirmed, and the vast majority involve fentanyl, said Sarah Schreiber, who supervises the toxicology lab at the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office. It's our number one identified component, far surpassing heroin, Schreiber said. Adding new fentanyl analogs are seen regularly. Between May and June alone, the office had doubled the number of overdose deaths compared to the same last year, she said. And that's coming from Milwaukee County saw a record-setting number of drug-related deaths last year with more than 407. We've talked about the drug-related epidemic, and it doesn't seem to be making a turn in the right direction. What we see right now is that it is in fact getting worse. State health officials issued a warning last week noting preliminary numbers from emergency departments in Wisconsin showed suspected opioid overdoses had increased 117% from 150 overdoses to 325 since the start of the virus pandemic compared to the same time in 2019. Now, there's something mainstream media is not talking about. The fact that this thing increased, this plague increased during this time. And it doesn't surprise anyone because, like, people had enough time to be off to go and get their fix. Not saying that they didn't have time before, but this is a very, I guess you can say, discouraging, despairing type of time we are in right now. So they need something to cope even more. So they're going to go even heavier with the drug usages, thus increasing the drug intake and then, of course, drug overdoses. We know that the challenges like fear of the virus, financial pressures, and isolation are the kinds of stressors that exacerbate behavioral health and substance use disorders, and that is why it is so important to ask for help if you need it. And they just basically said what I said in the more shorter terms. Department of Health Services Secretary Andrea Palm said in a news release, whether someone is struggling with opioid use disorder or other harmful substance use or mental health concerns like depression or suicidal thoughts, they should always remember that it is okay to ask for help, she said. In fact, it is encouraged. Well, y'all know whenever I do an opioid story, I have to give my signature phrase. And of course, that is, I feel nothing. Oh, it feels so good to actually say that again on a video like this. Well, now they have something even more crazy to deal with. And here we are thinking that fentanyl nothing could top that. And here we have this thing called ISO. And like I said, these big pharmaceutical companies, they don't care that these people are dying. They just care that they get in their money. And they don't care if a death happens to come with it. So, it is what it is. All you got to do is just say no. At the end of the day, you are in control of your body and your urges when it comes to these drugs. You know that you should be able to control yourself whenever you take something like this. And I bet you a lot of these drugs aren't supposed to be administered out of a hospital, out of a doctor's care anyway. And if it is, I'm sure they only give you a certain amount that you should take at a time and not OD like it's about to be the end of the world. It might be damn near the end of your life. But all it is at the end of the day is the people who are doing stuff like this, they lack self-control. That's basically all it boils down to.